Good evening and welcome to live stream at the Upper Room, everybody. My name is Ron Strand, and we're thankful that you're joining us tonight. We've got a wonderful show tonight, and we're going to be talking about some issues, cultural issues, and issues that are really important to you and me in terms of our faith. And we are pleased to have a wonderful man on tonight by the name of Robert Tyler, who's an attorney, and I'm going to talk about him in just a minute. But if you're tuning in for the first time tonight and you don't know what the Upper Room is, we are a Christian, I guess the best way to describe it is where entertainment meets ministry. And we are based in South Orange County, and we do events on a once per month basis. We have live music. We have comedians. We have speakers of note. We are not a church, but we are a 501c3. And we are a ministry that operates outside the church because we are an independent ministry. And we are currently on hiatus, I guess you would say, until we are able to get into our venue, a venue that we lease from somebody, but we are unable to meet right now because of the virus. But we're hoping that's going to change soon. So we started these once a week live streams, and we're going to continue them because we've gotten such great feedback on them, and it's just a great way to connect with so many different wonderful people. But I want you to start typing in questions tonight, and maybe you don't know what we're going to be talking about yet, but I'm going to explain that in a minute. But once you know, I want you to start typing questions because we are going to take some questions for Bob. If you want to view some of our past shows, you can find those on our YouTube channel at The Upper Room Presents. It's The Upper Room Presents, all three words, or is that four words? The Upper Room, that's four words. And you could view some of our past shows, and I think we've done about 20 of them now, I think. And if you have any questions, we love to hear feedback from you too. So give us an email at info@theupperroompresents.com. That's info@theupperroompresents.com. Please like us on Facebook. We would love to have you do that, and you'll be notified every time we get ready to start a live stream, and you'll hear about our upcoming events. And we would love to have you do that. But folks, tonight we're going to take a little bit of a detour. We've done a lot of musicians in the past and comedians, but we are going to talk about some a little bit more serious issues tonight. I want to introduce you to an individual who I've known for quite a few years, and as a full disclosure, I serve as the chairman of the board of directors at Advocates for Faith and Freedom. Tonight we're going to have the founder and the president of Advocates for Faith and Freedom. Would you welcome Robert Tyler? There he is. Hi, Bob.
Hello.
Good to see you. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Glad to be here.
Hey, I want to just take a minute because I know you're going to share some good news that you just got today, and that's going to be a little bit of a teaser for our audience. But it's really big news, actually, and good news. But I want to take just a minute for you to kind of talk about yourself and Advocates, how it got started, what you do, and so forth. But if you just take a minute to kind of do that.
Sure. Well, Advocates for Faith and Freedom is a nonprofit religious liberty law firm. We are dedicated to preserving the First Amendment right to spread the gospel of Jesus Christ. And right now it has been a monumental task in light of COVID-19 and the restrictions. I will tell you, it's unprecedented what we are experiencing right now, and I'm sure many others I understand and are experiencing the same. We started in 2002 with the ministry and have been litigating constitutional cases ever since. Cases pertaining to the First Amendment most often, and seeking to preserve our rights all the way to the U.S. Supreme Court if necessary. So I think that's a big summary of who we are and what we do.
And you said you started in 2007, I think you said, right?
We actually first formed in 2002. 2002. And we had a time. I actually spent 3 years with the Alliance, which is now known as Alliance Defending Freedom. And then in 2005, actually relaunched Advocates for Faith and Freedom. And you came aboard probably in 2005, 2006 as a chairman of the board.
I can't remember. It's been that long. Oh my gosh. Yeah. That time flies, doesn't it? Talk about just a couple of the past landmark cases that we've handled. I'm going to say you've handled, because I'm going to be the interviewer tonight and not the board member. But talk about some of the not a typical case, but some of the landmark cases, but some of the notable cases.
Well, recently we had just a couple years ago, we had a significant case that had to do with pro-life clinics, where California, upon pressure from the abortion industry, required pro-life Christian organizations who provide counseling to include either a letter or a poster on the wall, some information where they would be forced to give the phone number of where women can get an abortion. And that's exactly what they are opposed to. And so we filed a lawsuit in state court and federal court, and we won in state court. The case also went to the U.S. Supreme Court, and we were able to, through our briefing and what we did strategically, we're able to help the Supreme Court help our Alliance Defending Freedom actually had the federal side, and we were able to come alongside and help them, provide them all the evidence that was really necessary to be able to argue to get a win. And so that's one of our more recent cases that we won at the Supreme Court. We won in state court. We've had a number of cases where we've had free speech issues, and we win. A lot of times, sometimes these cases even win by us sending a demand letter. I can remember one great case where we had a young girl who wanted to put out a table in her quad in high school, and this girl's name was Carly, and she sent us back the nicest note, because we sent a demand letter saying, wait a minute, you just allowed last week the table promoting abortion in the high school, and therefore you have to allow her. She has a right to free speech, and equal access laws are applicable, and therefore she should be allowed. And so she did. And the awesome thing about that story, and this goes back 10, 15 years, she writes back and she says, I just want you to know how much of an impact you guys made. She said, a young girl came up to my table, and I had a chance to talk to her, and she began to cry because she was on her way to get an abortion after school that day. And because I was allowed to have a table here at school, she decided to keep her baby. That was one of those ones where you look at it and say, that didn't take a ton of effort, but it had a huge impact.
Absolutely. And Bob, we have literally, I think we crossed the line in California a long time ago. But it just seems to be getting crazier and crazier. And we're going to talk a little bit tonight about church attendance and the right to gather and so forth. But I want to talk a little bit about I know what I want to do. I want you to share the good news that you got today. And before you do that, let's give a little bit of clarity to the folks, because you always need a plaintiff to bring a case. Explain how that works, because you can't just file a lawsuit unless you have a plaintiff. Is that correct?
Sure. Yeah, and sometimes the cases we take on are cases that we set up. Literally, we see that there's an issue. There's an unlawful law that's been put in place, and we might reach out to somebody and say, would you be interested in being a plaintiff on this issue? Strategically, we are looking for this particular characteristic in a person, and we might bring a lawsuit. Now, that's exactly what happened in Roe versus Wade. They went out and found, the plaintiff, and they set it up. And so that's what we do sometimes. But I would say more often than not, we actually have people who call us with issues that arise. Over the last 5 months since the COVID crisis began, and there was the shutdown, we've been counseling churches and schools, and it has been a nonstop, just a 24-hour, race to try to help meet the needs of so many churches and Christian schools. Here's a situation where one of our existing clients is the Orange County Board of Education.
This is the big news today, right?
Yes, this is the big news.
Okay.
So the Orange County Board of Education called on us to file a lawsuit against the governor to reopen schools.
Yeah.
And the huge news is that we made a strategic decision to skip the trial courts or the Superior Court in California, skip the courts of appeal. We made the decision to file in state court because the state law is stronger than the federal law on the issue of schooling for children. And we also went out and we have a handful of Christian schools who have called on us and asked us to represent them as well. So we have 2 petitions we filed in the Supreme Court late Friday. The petitions ask for an immediate stay. It's called a writ of mandate in the first instance, which means it's very unusual. It's a writ, a proceeding. It's a situation where the courts are typically never take these cases. I mean, the odds of actually having your petition accepted by the California Supreme Court is probably 1 in 100, if that. And this is a situation where you file in the first instance with the California Supreme Court because the issue is so monumental and so significant, and we need an immediate decision. And so we filed this petition to have schools reopened for public and private schools. And the California Supreme Court just 3 hours ago sent us an email requiring the state to file an opposition to our pleadings. That's huge. Most of the time what happens is the California Supreme Court simply denies, and then you have to start down below at the lower court system. But here, for the Supreme Court to even accept it in the first place was a giant deal. It was, something a strategic decision we made not to go to the federal courts because the federal courts, frankly, are not working in our favor in California. And so we wanted to go the state court route. And here's the gist of the case. The gist of the case is that here we have COVID-19. The numbers do not justify the shutdown. And there might be a lot of people who disagree. I understand. We have I think it's 6 experts who testified. Psychologists, a school psychologist, an epidemiologist from Stanford, public health doctors. We've had appropriate testimony to come and show, number one, that schools are not a place of transmission for COVID-19. Mm-hmm. Kids are almost immune from this. They catch it, but generally speaking, unless they have some underlying health condition that's serious, they don't die from this. We've only had this entire time, we had one 15 or 16-year-old girl in all of California who passed away, and that was recently, unfortunately, but she had some serious underlying health conditions. And so what we are looking at is saying, here the schools are not a place of transmission. The studies all show kids do not transfer COVID-19 to adults because they carry such a low viral load in their system that it's just not enough to infect adults, generally speaking. And that comes from worldwide studies over in Europe and Iceland and other places where schools have been open for quite some time. And so we presented these expert witnesses in our pleadings, and we are arguing that it is unconstitutional under the California Constitution to prevent the poor and disabled students from getting a proper education. You see, you might have heard that there's a lot of these, they're called pods popping up, where parents gather together and they jointly hire a teacher to be a tutor for the kids. And they might all gather at someone's house. And so a lot of more wealthy families are doing this sort of thing. A lot of wealthier families are in a position where they have jobs where they're working on the computer at home, and maybe they have it a little easier and they're able to kind of manage their kids' education from home while at the same time completing their work. But, for those who are poor, it's much more difficult, particularly the single moms. And so we have a Hispanic speaking single mom who doesn't speak English, and she's supposed to not only manage the education of her child in English, and actually supervise the education in English when she doesn't speak. And she's not computer literate, and she has a job working in a retail store, and she only speaks Spanish. This is horrible for families such as that. So there's a lot of kids falling through the cracks. And just today, there was some information out on Fox News that I saw that talking about the suicide rate of high schoolers.
Yeah.
And so we're looking at this from a much bigger picture. What is happening in California with the shutdown of schools is devastating. It's harming those kids who are poor, the minorities. It's harming those kids who have special needs. It is devastating to those kids who have emotional issues, in most instances, where social issues. And so it's been really tough. And so we brought this case and said it violates the Equal Protection Clause of the California Constitution. And we had a lot of people say, well, oh, come on, that, the likelihood of this occurring, the California Supreme Court, aren't they liberal? And I think, yeah, they are. And I think that's why they're interested in this case, because it's really hurting a small segment of society unequally. And that's the basis. And if we can have this reopened for require that in-person schooling be allowed or be required to be available, then parents would at least have the opportunity to say, we want in-person, or for those parents who are still concerned, they could do distance learning. But either way, give the option. That's what we're after.
Yeah, you lost me just a little bit there, because my next question was going to be it's highly unusual that the liberal-leaning California Supreme Court reached that the California Supreme Court, who's typically a very liberal-leaning court, has agreed to take this on. But you said that's why they took it on. And I lost you a little bit there. Why do you think they took it on?
I think they took it on because, a more liberal perspective, let's just say, maybe I'm stereotyping significantly, and I am actually. I'm stereotyping. The liberal ideology is generally one that would be more sympathetic to protecting the plight of minorities, the poor, etc. Now, that's not really true. I don't believe that to be the case, because I think for those of us who are Christians, we actually care more about the poor. We care more about the minorities. We care more about loving our fellow man, etc. However, this is when you're talking about education, this is an issue that I think liberals can wrap their arms around and say, yeah, this isn't right. Here we have a shutdown that the governor is imposing on us, and it's not necessary to shut down schools. The only reason why schools are really closed right now, it's not because of the disease. It's because of the unions have so much influence over the governor, and the California Teachers Association is saying, we don't want schools to be opened until sometime in the future. I mean, the LA Unified Teachers Union, I don't remember the exact name of it, but they put out a manifesto effectively of their requirements before they would go back to school and teach. And some of it included, we want to defund the police and the social issues that have nothing to do with education. And so I think that really what's happening here is that the only reason why schools are closed is it's a political issue.
Yeah.
Come November, schools will somehow suddenly reopen
Yeah.
after the election. So that's it. So it's really it's this issue of by going to the Supreme Court. I think those who may be more liberal on the bench can look at this and see that this is an issue that they care about, and this is an important issue. That who's falling through the cracks? It's not the rich white kids, generally speaking.
Yeah.
I hate to say, but it's not them. It's not those who are more wealthy. It's the poor kids who may more often be minorities living in the inner city, possibly. And so as a result, we're taking up their cause, and I feel like it's a righteous cause, and I feel like it's something Christ would do.
Yeah. And I think that's absolutely true. And I think, in the end, the kids are all getting the brunt of this because they're not getting educated. I guess there's that part of it that, well, I don't want to go down that line. I was going to say, what's being taught in public schools today is horrendous. And, so you wonder sometimes, are they better off back at school? But you brought up another issue that I wanted to talk about, and that is the teachers. Because if you get this injunction, they're forced to go back to school and teach, and they're putting all these demands on. And what you see that as an uphill battle. And also, what about the parents right now? Are you hearing that parents want these kids to go back to school? Is there a large segment of those parents that are saying we don't want to expose our kids to this virus? Because this whole thing is just gone through the roof in terms of people being fearful and protecting themselves and so forth. What are you hearing from the parents?
Yeah. So, Ron, you and I are, our kids we don't have any kids in school anymore.
Right.
And so it's a little harder to know, to personally experience it. But what I'm hearing from the parents is I had a single mom call me and she says, I'm willing to be a part of this lawsuit. I read about, the fact that you guys are going to be filing this lawsuit, and I'm willing to be a part of it and be a plaintiff. And I said, what's going on? She says, well, we just started school today. Now, this was I think it was Thursday. And she said, forgive me, but she says, it was hell. I said, what happened? She said, well, here I am. I work for a finance company where they provide financial services, big bank. And she works from home. She says, I get up at 5 a.m. to try to get 2.5 hours worth of work done. And this is essentially what she did at at the end of last year when schools were closed as well. She says, so I get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, try to get 2.5 hours worth of work done at 7:30, get my kids up, get them set on a computer. And then they're supposed to focus on the computer. And then I try to help supervise them for a few hours till about 11 o'clock. And then I go back to work from 11 till about 7 o'clock at night. And, and then in the meantime, they're given homework, they're given all these things, and there's no one there to supervise these kids except for the parents. It's her responsibility. And so what I've heard from other parents is they're saying, here I am, I'm Googling, arithmetic issues and how to teach my kids so many things that, their teachers are supposed to be teaching them. And that's what we're paying for. I had one family, clients of ours, it's a Hispanic family, and mom speaks only Spanish, dad speaks English, neat, good Christian family. And they go to Calvary Chapel, Costa Mesa, and they have 3 boys. Somehow all 3 have autism. And they normally would have it's called an IEP program, Independent Education Plan. Mm-hmm. These independent education plans simply cannot be implemented online. And these kids who have autism, some are more severe than others, they might get an hour of education and then that's it. And then the parents are sitting here trying to help implement what the experts would normally implement, because we're paying, millions upon millions of dollars to the California educational system.
Right.
A lot of difficulty for parents, especially single moms, those parents who might not have graduated from high school themselves, parents who are not computer literate. There's a huge, what they call digital divide, where, a lot of families just don't they don't have the internet, or if they do have internet, it's very unstable. And so there's a lot of difficulties, and this whole online learning system is wholly inappropriate. Really, these kids are the political pawns in a chess game. It's very sad.
Yeah, it really is. And the tentacles of this whole debacle go so deep, because there are all those elements of it, it's just crazy. I saw something today, and I hesitate bringing it up because I don't know if it's true, but while we're talking about school, I saw something online today of a father who was who lives in East Los Angeles, and he showed his computer screen of his daughter's school class, and they have the Black Lives Matter logo on there, and they're talking about different things that are Marxist and so forth. Mm-hmm. Have you heard anything about this kind of thing with going on and what's being taught? Well, what he did say, and again, I hesitate because I haven't verified this, but what he said is he went and spoke to the principal, who was very nice. But what she said is, look, at Black Lives Matter is working with us in the school district. Have you heard anything like that that's infiltrating into the public school system?
I haven't, but just the Marxist ideology, that we've known that for years, filtering into the public school system. One of the things that you point out, I struggled in the beginning with this question of, should schools reopen, and should our kids be, should we be trying to get our kids back into schools? Well, we need private schools to reopen. Yeah. Because, that's where, a lot of our kids are getting a good Christian education, and they're not allowed to open. Yeah. And that's a fundamental violation of our rights and the kids' rights to get an education. So when it comes to public schools, on the other hand, there is that danger and there's that risk. But at least the good news is that I shouldn't say the good news. There's this balance, okay? We know that we have kids that are being abused. We know kids that the rate of reporting for child abuse has dropped. I've heard numbers anywhere from 30 to 40% from what they were before. Why? Because typically the reporters will be teachers and ministers in churches, and Sunday school teachers and youth pastors. And those are all closed. And so there's kids that are trapped with their abusers in home, in their house. And so there's this balance. Yes, schools are a real problem. There's no doubt about it. Public schools, Black Lives Matter, all this Marxist education, things like that getting into it. And so there is a real balance. But at the same time, there's also what we're seeing is far greater emotional issues, even right now. Mm-hmm. Kids getting into trouble, kids committing suicide. I don't know. There's no easy answer to this. But all I know is that here you have the unions in control of the state. They're in control of the educational system, and the governor's kowtowing to their demands. And, that's not right either.
And I think we should point out here too that not all teachers are bad that are in the public school system by far. There's a lot of great teachers, but it's what they're being forced to teach is the problem.
What? In that note, I'd like to say, I would actually say that there's a lot of wonderful Christian teachers that are missionaries in the schools, and I would say that by and large, most teachers in public schools do not want to teach the the garbage that is coming out of Sacramento.
Yeah.
And most of them do not teach it because there's this ability that they have to have teacher discretion. It's, any teacher will know there's no way for them to get through all of the agenda that is put out there for them to teach in any particular class. And so they often pick and choose what they will teach. Most teachers are not going out and teaching this horrible sex ed, the horrible things that are out there. And they either skim over it, don't really talk about it. And there's some wonderful teachers that are doing that. I encourage teachers all the time. I say, look, be a missionary, go out and you be the one to teach sex ed in your school so that you can control what is taught. And you have the discretion to be able to say, well, I didn't have time to get to this, sex act chapter.
Yeah.
It's horrible.
So they do have that latitude. I didn't realize that.
Yeah, there's just, and when I say they have that latitude, it's not like the law says you have the latitude to teach what you want. That's not what it is. The mere fact that every teacher will say is that, there's some things I can spend more time on and other things I don't have time to spend on. And so they never get through the entire curriculum that's required in most instances. So it is something that happens in the classroom, and teachers, use their discretion often with regard to how much effort or time they put into particularly controversial subjects.
Yeah, I want to interject right here because we do have a couple of questions on the screen that I do want to bring up. One of them in particular, maybe talking a little bit about, well, maybe we could talk about it now. But one of them is, I'm not going to put it on the screen because it's a little bit too long, and I think he may have missed part of it. But he's talking about, this is a question from Jim Muslin, saying that he saw that very same video that I saw. But what his question is there a way to file a lawsuit to keep the schools from teaching Marxist and all these different these agendas? That's a big uphill battle, isn't it?
Well, yeah, it's a huge uphill battle, and as you know, we have filed many of lawsuits against public schools. Yeah, and in some instances we have won. In some instances, the schools have settled, and in other instances, we just flat out lost. The problem is that the federal court system, typically where we would bring a First Amendment-oriented claim, generally speaking, it's the federal judges have been against us here in the Ninth Circuit. Yeah. The good news is that Trump has been appointing a number of judges. We have we're seeing a shift in the Ninth Circuit, not a shift to conservatism, not one that is so huge that we can jump for victory. But a perfect example is the recent case from the Ninth Circuit on the Second Amendment and the prohibition of certain types of ammunition or guns, I think it was. And the Ninth Circuit actually ruled in a conservative fashion. It was a 2-to-1 vote, 2 conservatives against 1 liberal. Yeah. It was never hard. It was statistically impossible 5 years ago to be able to have a 2-judge majority. There, a court of appeal typically is 3 judges. It was almost statistically impossible for any case that we took up to have 2 conservative judges that would be ruling on our case. Yeah. So it's changing, it's shifting, and that's the good news. So what can we do? Well, we keep praying that Trump stays in office, appoints more, and maybe people don't agree with Trump, but he's appointing good judges, generally speaking, that are more favorable to us, and giving us an opportunity to have a shot in the Ninth Circuit now that we didn't have before. And so we can bring lawsuits against schools. And I think we're going to see a dramatic change if Trump is allowed to remain in office next year and next 4 years. I'll be incredibly excited. Had Hillary Clinton, let me just tell you one thing real quick. Had Hillary Clinton won, I talked to you about this. I was getting really discouraged because here we are, we're a legal organization, and we bring lawsuits to try to preserve First Amendment liberties, religious liberty, free speech. Had Hillary Clinton won, we were so behind the eight ball in the Ninth Circuit and here on the West Coast. It would not have made any sense to continue spending money filing lawsuits in just knowing that there's no chance of winning. And so, with Trump's win, and it has completely shifted things, and it's pretty exciting.
It's very exciting. And take a second, Bob, to explain the Ninth Circuit, because I got an education several years ago on one of the cases that you argued before the Ninth Circuit. We all know that the U.S. Supreme Court consists of 9 justices, but the California or the Ninth Circuit Court is a federal court, and the circuit meaning that it covers what states?
It covers the entire West Coast, including Hawaii, California, Oregon, Washington. It skips over to Idaho, Nevada, Arizona, Guam. I don't know if I'm missing any. I think that covers it. It's the largest circuit in the country, covers the largest area, and it's made up of 25 active judges. There'll be some additional judges that get assigned from the lower courts that might take on a case or two, some retired judges that take on a case now and then. Out of the 25 judges, I know that in a recent decision where we had we were defending the Chino Valley Unified School District, they had an invocation policy that allowed prayer an invocation or prayer before school board meetings. We agreed to take the case on so long as they were willing to take it all the way up to the U.S. Supreme Court. They had lost in the district court when they came to me and asked us to take it over. And I said, well, we're going to lose. There's no chance of us winning in the Ninth Circuit. And at that point in time, Trump had not appointed any judges in the Ninth Circuit yet. Then he began to appoint. And I think by the time the decision was made, we had 2 judges that Trump had appointed. And there was one lone conservative holdout in the Ninth Circuit out of the 25 from the past. We filed a petition to the entire Ninth Circuit asking them to review the decision of this 3-judge panel who ruled against us and said prayers before school board meetings are unlawful, they're unconstitutional. By the way, prayer before school board meetings, before city council meetings, before the legislature, that's been going on since the beginning of our nation's founding. So now suddenly it's unconstitutional. And so the Freedom from Religion Foundation brought that lawsuit. And when we filed our petition to the entire 25 judges and said, please appoint 11 judges and review this, we knew that they wouldn't vote to take it up because they have to have a majority at least. What we did get, though, we had 8 judges who signed what's considered a dissenting opinion saying we should have taken this case up. We should have reviewed this because invocations at school board meetings are not unconstitutional. That was huge because prior to Trump getting elected, there was one judge that I could count on in the Ninth Circuit that might write this dissenting opinion that gets us an opportunity to get in front of the U.S. Supreme Court. So we were about ready to file our petition, and then there was the election in November, and unfortunately, our 3-2 majority on the school board shifted. We lost. We only had 2 members now who wanted to take this case up to the Supreme Court. The other 3 were against us from the beginning. They were liberals, and so bottom line is, unfortunately, elections have significant consequences because now in the Ninth Circuit, it is illegal for all states in the Ninth Circuit to allow invocations at school board meetings to some degree. I'll caveat that because we're going to be defending probably another school district, and there's some opportunities we think that we're going to be able to defend this with some changes to some policies, et cetera. But bottom line is the Ninth Circuit was not terribly favorable, but now we had 8 judges out of 25. So we're moving in the right direction.
That's wonderful. I mean, California has got to be the worst of the worst in terms of the craziness of what's going on. I do want to take some time, and folks, if you have questions, I do see questions on the screen, and I do want to get to those. We'll take some time, but we're 40 minutes into an hour-long interview, and I do want to get to what's going on today with church meeting, because Bob, I know that you are involved in defending a number of churches right now who are wanting to meet in person. Tell us some of the current cases that you're working on, if you can, and where those are. And then I want to ask some specific questions with regard to that. And folks, I'm seeing all your questions are great questions. And maybe what we'll do is we'll kind of take a time a little bit later to get some of those, because they're a little bit off topic, but they're important questions. So go ahead, Bob.
Well, as I said in the beginning, the time that we're in right now is unprecedented. We are living in a dictatorship, and I think most people understand that.
Yep.
But let me explain it from a legal perspective. The Emergency Services Act in California authorizes the governor to declare a state of emergency. There is no end in the statutory scheme, in the law. There's no time frame that it says this must end within 6 months, or this must end within 6 months, or the legislature must approve the continued state of emergency. There's nothing like that. It is up to the governor's sole discretion, and we call that unbridled discretion, to be able to continue this. This is no different than living in a third world country where you have a dictator who creates rules and we have to live by them. And that's what we're under right now. And the legislature can't do anything about it. There is a provision that actually says that the governor must terminate the state of emergency at the earliest time that the conditions warrant. Now, that's, again, up to the governor's sole discretion.
Open-ended and vague, right?
Open-ended and vague. And so what we're doing now is, we started off 3 months ago bringing lawsuits for churches, saying you can't be violating our constitutional liberties this way, because the Constitution, the constitutional liberties trump these orders by the governor. Now, unfortunately, because of some decisions that came out of the Supreme Court a number of years ago, it's proven to be difficult to win. It's been difficult because of the analysis, and I don't want to get into the depth of that, but let's just say that the free exercise clause of the First Amendment is not nearly as strong as it was prior to 1990, I believe it was. Before that, it was very difficult for the government to put substantial burdens on churches and to justify it, or the free exercise of religion. Since then, all the government has to say is, hey, these laws are neutral and generally applicable. Now, we all have heard the horrible decision by Justice Roberts that he said, Caesar's Palace is okay to continue operating unlimited, or have 1,500, 1,000, 20,000 people in there, but churches, you can only have 50 people, and they're treated differently, totally unequally. Justice Roberts made a horrible ruling in that case, but it was on an emergency petition. I think that when a case gets up to the Supreme Court after it's been fully vetted down below, I think he's going to rule our way. But I just don't think that he wanted to take it up on an emergency petition, because I think he was probably worried about COVID and the evidence is not all out, et cetera. So now we have the situation where what we're doing is we're going to challenge the underlying statutory scheme that gives the governor this unbridled discretion, because there's constitutional law that says government officials cannot have this outright unbridled discretion for an indefinite period of time. Yeah. And that's exactly what we're dealing with. But in the meantime, let's talk about some of these cases. Pastor Rob McCoy, who we represent, I was in court, was it Thursday of last week, and he was brought in on contempt charges. Contempt charges because he said, I'm going to continue meeting indoors. We have, I've got one of my pastors who has a sun allergy, which means if he's in the sun for just a couple minutes straight and it's hot, it's very dangerous to him. He gets sick, etc. You have elderly people who, and they're saying, oh, you gotta sit outside in 90-degree heat in Thousand Oaks and wear a mask. This is crazy. And furthermore, it's just a complete violation of our rights when the science does not justify it. As I said before, we have experts that are coming to show that, the odds of a healthy individual dying from COVID-19 is 0.0049%.
Yeah.
For those who have conditions, it's upon them to stay home and protect themselves. It's not the rest of our responsibility to shut down the economy and everything, when really we know it's a political thing. So Rob McCoy is standing strong and saying, I'm going to continue holding church services to the extent that you go ahead and put me in jail. He was fined by the judge $3,000, and the church stepped up and he had that money donated immediately. We have a church that I just received notice today. One of our clients in San Jose received a $5,000 fine because they refused to stop meeting, and they're meeting indoors. Calvary Chapel of San Jose. We have Calvary Chapel of Downey, who has received a cease and desist notice as well. Listen to this. This is hilarious. They had someone come to the church and do an inspection from the county health department. When he was doing the inspection, he said, I noted that there are people hugging and shaking hands. But here's the one thing that was of great note to them, that the pastor who actually the pastor was kind enough to walk them around the church and show them what they're doing, even though it's in violation of the state orders. The violation, notice the violation said that the pastor who was walking us around had a, quote, ill-fitting mask that often fell below the nose and required constant readjustment. And I thought, are you kidding me? That this is a violation? In Ventura, listen to this. In Ventura County, at trial, I was able to show how hypocritical they are. So they sent out two officers from the code enforcement department. You see, the sheriff and the DA's office, they don't want anything to do with this. They're saying, forget it. So they sent out these two individuals from code enforcement. These two individuals are sitting in one vehicle. Mm-hmm. They're not part of the same family unit. They're not even wearing masks. They are there for 5 hours inside the vehicle. I get them to testify that, okay, I kind of let them into it. I'm sure you were wearing your masks, right, when you're sitting in the car and during questioning, and oh yeah, we're wearing our masks, etc. And then I show them a picture. Here's a picture. Who is this? You weren't wearing masks, were you? In fact, you weren't wearing masks at all, were you? And they had to testify. Yeah, you're right. The reality of it is they're so hypocritical that when asked, I said, well, why is it? How come you're not subject to the same laws that everybody else are subject to? You're not in the same family. You're sitting less than 6 feet apart. You're practically shoulder to shoulder. What is it? And they said, well, it's interesting. This is like they planned it. They said, well, we're in the same cohort and we know each other and we know how protective they're. I asked the judge at the end, I said, Your Honor, I said, how about if this, the church members start a cohort? Does that somehow mean that somehow we're exempt from the laws?
Yeah. Or it's like you said, what if we just became a casino or,
Yeah, there you go.
What this is tantamount, and folks, listen to this carefully, because this is what's happening in our state right now and throughout the country. Because what you just talked about, I did want to bring up, and you so eloquently talked about it, at Calvary Chapel of Downey, at the Ventura Church with Rob McCoy. What they're doing is sending out people under the guise of code enforcement. This is tantamount to the brown shirts that the Nazis did. And I know I'm getting a little bit heated here, but this is absolute craziness. And they're coming out and doing what you just said, and they're calling out people that are hugging, my God, and embracing, and they're not from the same family. This is what's happening in the church, and I think the church needs to wake up, and
Right.
Because you've got men like Rob McCoy, you've got Pastor Jack Hibbs, you've got John MacArthur, who are standing up and saying enough is enough. We're going to do this, and we're going to risk arrest and fines for this. And thank God that we have advocates for faith and freedom who's out there defending these brave pastors. We're getting really close to time, and we might go a little bit over, but I want to get to questions. But I also want to ask you, have you heard anything about this group of 4,000 pastors who have signed something that basically said, we're going to comply with everything that the government is telling us to do? We're going to wear masks. If you haven't, there's no need to go down that rabbit trail, but it was something that I saw. I sent it to you earlier. Maybe you didn't get a chance to see it, but
Sorry.
no, it's okay. But it may not be an issue. Again, you read something, you don't know whether it's accurate or not. But this is what's going on right now. And where is the case right now, for instance, with Rob McCoy's church? And that is Calvary Chapel. What do they call it? Godspeak?
It's actually called Godspeak Calvary Chapel.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right now, the church met again. They were ordered to pay a contempt damages in the amount of $3,000 last week. They met on Sunday. They did it again. I suspect that we'll have contempt charges brought again by the county. And what are they going to ask for next? It might be jail time. The same thing is going to happen with the pastor of Calvary Chapel Downey. The same thing is going to happen with pastor of Calvary Chapel San Jose. And there's other churches. I can't even name them. There's 2 schools in Fresno County. Oh, there's Pastor Jim Franklin in Fresno County, and he's received a cease and desist order. And so what's happening is these counties are bringing lawsuits, and eventually they're going to ask that these pastors be brought into court and put in jail for teaching the gospel. And, we've looked at it and said, it's probably going to take that. Here's one of the things that is very concerning is the reality of it is the facts, the science, the evidence shows that, the idea of wearing masks and social distancing, I have experts who look at it and say, look, all that is going to do is delay the COVID virus. It's not going to prevent people from getting sick.
Yeah,
the
it doesn't
virus
just magically go away.
Doesn't go away. It just delays it. And, I have one expert who said, Bob, we could have been done with this within a month if we just didn't do social distancing and we kept everything open and we told the people who have underlying health conditions and the elderly to stay home, and everybody else went about their business. Yes, they would get sick. Yes, a few would die. But as it turns out, more people die from the flu. More kids have died in the United States from the normal influenza. Twice as many have died from influenza than have died from COVID-19. But what's happening here is that the truth is not getting out. We're living in fear. And what we're trying to do often now is just to get out the truth. And we're going to be putting out a video that I'm going to identify. I'm going to walk through. Probably it's going to be 15, 20 minutes. And I'm going to present the evidence that our expert witnesses are presenting to the California Supreme Court and try to dispel this fear. But pastors and churches, boy, we've got to stand up, because you're exactly right. This is like the Brown Church coming out. This is horrendous, especially when they're coming out and they're pointing the finger at someone else saying, you're not wearing a mask. And they themselves are not wearing a mask. And they sign a declaration under the penalty of perjury about how horrible this is. And they themselves are not wearing a mask.
It's absolutely unbelievable. What would you say to the Christians out there that say, well, you know what, we're we're not called to be activists. We need to obey the laws of the land and so forth. What would you say to them?
Well, first of all, they have a misreading of Scripture. Frankly, just a flat-out misinterpretation of Romans 13. I will say real briefly, if I can address that. Romans 13 talks about, the rulers at the time are here for your good, not for evil. Well, at the time Romans was written, it was a time, some people would say, and even John MacArthur in one of his, I just happen to know this because I taught on Romans 13 at a church not too long ago. And I looked up to hear, what did John MacArthur have to say? And actually at the time he said the revolution should never have even happened because that was a violation of Romans 13. But now, thankfully, John MacArthur has come to his senses and realizes that he probably was wrong in that teaching. And he put out a great statement, and I fully support him. By the way, his attorneys and myself, we're collaborating, working together all the time.
Good.
The fact is that Romans 13 was written at a time when there was relative peace. And you find in Acts, it talks about this period of peace. And Nero, although he was the ruler at the time, it was before he went crazy. He had his mom was basically running the country. He hadn't done anything horrible yet. He wasn't burning Christians at the stake. And there was this time of peace. It's called Pax Romana, a time of peace. Just a misinterpretation. And when you take things in context and read it that way, you see, oh, yeah, well, at the time. But now when you take a look at what's happening and we're being told you cannot do church. We're being told if you go to church, you have to stay apart. You can't hug. You can't shake hands. You can't give each other a holy kiss. You can't meet indoors. And it's prevented a lot of people. So I look at that and I say, it's a complete misreading of Scripture. What did the angels do when was it Peter and John? I can't remember, or was it Paul and Silas who were imprisoned, and the angel came and opened the gates of the jail and say, go straight back to the temple and continue preaching the gospel when they were just arrested for doing that exact thing.
Right. Yep. Absolutely. That's absolutely true. And, I brought up an issue the other day in a discussion that, people think, well, we have no rights as Christians that way, but Paul, when he was before Agrippa, said, I appeal to Caesar because he had that right. And he exercised his rights as a citizen of Rome to do that. Bob, what I want to do.
He could have gone away peacefully.
He could have
said,
yes.
Hey, I take the peaceful route because they said, look, Paul, we don't want any more problems. Just please go away. And what did he say? No, I appeal to Caesar. Why did he do that? Because God was calling him to step up and actually make a bigger difference on the world. And he did that. And I think Christians right now, wake up. You don't, until you're sitting there looking at these people in the eye who are accusing you of violating health orders that make absolutely no sense these days, that are clearly political, that are clearly intended to silence you. And I understand you may not think that, but you will think that maybe 6 months from now when this thing's still ongoing. You have to stand up. We have to learn from history. Now's not the time to slouch, because one day, as one pastor said, if I don't stand up and stand behind Pastor Rob McCoy or other pastors, next thing, they're going to be coming after me.
That's right. That's right. I'm gonna do a little diversion here, because if those of you who've asked questions, I'd like to have you stay on. We'll go a little bit, and all those of you that are watching, I'd love you to stay on a little bit longer. Can you go a couple minutes longer, Bob? Sure. But what I want to do before the end of the hour here is, Marisa, would you bring up the website for Advocates for Faith and Freedom? Folks, Advocates for Faith and Freedom is a nonprofit, as Bob said in earlier on. And as full disclosure, I'll mention it again if you tuned in late. As full disclosure, I serve on the board of directors of Advocates for Faith and Freedom, but I'm here tonight as an interviewer of Bob. That's faith-freedom.com. They operate on support from people like you. And I encourage you, because these are the men and women who are standing before, if you will, the Sanhedrin, standing before Agrippa and people like Caesar, and standing up to the rulers of the day who are becoming dictators. But they need your help. And Bob doesn't even know that I was going to do this tonight, but and the upper room operates from support from donors as well. But I'm not even going to go there tonight, because what is needed is they need to have more attorneys. They need to have more attorneys on staff. They need money to file lawsuits and so forth. Please, please, please pray about supporting Advocates for Faith and Freedom, and whatever you can give them. And ask the Lord to direct you as to what you can do. Because, folks, our rights are being usurped. They're being trampled on. As Christians, we're being cast aside. It's happening. It's happening. What we've always feared for so many years, because we know at some point we'll be persecuted, but it's stepping up. And it's folks like Bob Tyler, and it's folks like the attorneys that he has there at Faith and Freedom who need your support. And so would you please prayerfully consider donating? You can go to their website at faith-freedom.com. And Bob, is there any other way they can get a hold of you there, or is that the best way to do it?
Yeah, that's the best way. That is the best way. You can shoot us emails. Our phone number's there too. And Ra, I would just, add that we also have a private law practice where I make a living.
Yep.
And I don't get paid from Advocates for Faith and Freedom.
That's right.
Very rarely, actually.
Good point. Yeah.
And so I feel like I can come and say, hey, we need attorneys. That I need to hire more attorneys in Advocates for Faith and Freedom. I need your support. We put a lot of money. I literally have spent, since COVID started, I have worked 90% of all my efforts, 95% of all my efforts have gone into the nonprofit. We need more support, quite frankly, and I would greatly appreciate your help.
And it's a good point you raised, because folks, I, as a board member, I see what Bob does not take. I see the hours that he and his attorneys have worked, countless hours that they don't get paid for, because the issue, the cause is greater than that. And so, you see a man that you're looking at, a man right there who has spent countless hours defending your freedoms, and is not even getting paid for it in many cases, in most cases. So please help Advocates for Faith and Freedom by going to faith-freedom.com. Hey, let's take a couple minutes to answer some of the questions that have come in, because there are a few of them. And Marisa, can we go back up to the top and see what? Let's see. There's Jason and Jenny Snowbeck. Do you only practice in California? We're in Arizona, wondering what can be done in case mandatory COVID vaccinations are required. Good question.
Yeah, that is a major issue. I will say that most of our cases that we're involved in are in California, because what happens in California gets exported to the rest of the country. Mm-hmm. Although we do take cases around the country, and we absolutely do work on them. We're in the Court of Appeal in Manhattan right now, Second Circuit Federal Court of Appeal, and so we do have cases elsewhere. But absolutely, if something happens with regard to vaccinations, that is a major issue. A lot of us are really concerned about this mandatory vaccination of, they're going to come at us and they're going to want us to have a vaccine, and they're going to tell us, you're not allowed to, I hate to say it, think about this, you're not allowed to buy or sell unless you have a vaccine. Yeah. I don't know. It's going to be interesting. And so,
well, they could do that in so many ways. You can't get on a plane. You can't, right. Well, yeah, you can't buy or sell. I mean, those are the things that they can implement through that.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
Yeah. So I think there was a few other questions there, Marisa, if we can go back up. This is from Mandy League. Is it possible to bring a case against children having to wear masks in school? School has begun, and I've heard children hate masks and say they can't breathe, and it's very hot here in Texas.
Yeah, and surprising, even in Texas, that the issue is masks. let me just say that strategically, right now, we are just trying to focus on issues of protecting our religious liberties, getting businesses reopened, churches reopened, schools reopened. The issue of whether or not one wears a mask is a little bit incidental at this point in time. It is a problem, but that's not the direction we're heading today. I hate to say it, wearing a mask is somewhat less significant than the other issues that we're faced with. Although it is a significant issue, and don't get me wrong, I hope that at some point in time we're going to be able to have the capacity to bring such a lawsuit against the wearing of masks, because I think the science is going to show that it's worse, especially for kids. It's worse than not wearing a mask. So, but help us hire another. I've got 2 attorneys right now that we want to hire, and we're working on it. So,
yep, absolutely. One last question here from Jim Muslin. Says that, let's see, can I click this, or there we go. I heard Greg Laurie this morning saying that all his churches were open. How come they are not coming after him? What is he doing different than these other pastors? And that would be more about maybe where he is located, right? Based on the local governments.
Yeah. So in California, Orange County, San Bernardino County, Riverside County, those are counties where the sheriffs, the district attorney's office are all saying, we're not coming after churches. We're not going to be here to close them down. And the county council is saying, we're not going to close them down. In fact, in Orange County, we helped draft a resolution for the Board of Supervisors. It seems like an eternity ago, but it was just maybe 2 months ago, that 2 months ago, where they basically said churches are essential. We're going to let them stay open. And that worked. And so in Orange County, if I'll be honest, if your church is not meeting at all, and you're in Orange County, it's time to find another church, because there's no reason why your church should not be allowed. There's no reason why your church should not be meeting together. Riverside County, same thing. Churches need to be coming together. If they want to do it outdoors, okay, that's their choice. But quite frankly, there's churches meeting indoors in Orange County, Riverside County, San Bernardino County, and no one's coming after them to stop them. And these are courageous pastors, and there are mega churches that are doing it, where they've got 20,000 people coming on a Sunday.
Yeah. Crazy stuff, Bob. And I think, I have a whole list of questions here that we didn't get to. I think we need to do another night of this and explore some of these other things. But again, Marisa, would you bring up the website for advocates it's faith-freedom. I need to read it. faith-freedom.com, where you can go there. There's a donate button. Please prayerfully consider supporting Advocates for Faith and Freedom. Their work is absolutely vital. Absolutely vital. Bob, thank you so much for being on tonight. We'll do it again. And we're looking forward to see what happens with all these other cases, and some good news. And, hopefully we'll prevail in November, because there's got to be some sanity that's comes back to this nation. Although I don't know, it's sometimes hard to be optimistic, but the fact is God is in control. Mm-hmm. And, we know the outcome, we know what's going to happen. And so, but in the meantime, we're called to dwell in the land and cultivate faithfulness.
Amen.
Yep. Bob, thanks so much. Folks, thank you for tuning in tonight. And for those of you or if you have friends who are not on Facebook or don't have Facebook, you'll be able to view this in its entirety tomorrow on YouTube at The Upper Room Presents. And please subscribe to our page there. Please like us on Facebook. Folks, and with questions, thank you for weighing in tonight. And Bob, once again, thanks again. And how can we pray for advocates, and how can we pray for you?
Well, there's a couple things. One, please pray for our work at the Supreme Court in California right now. We have a very, very busy, stressful time coming up this week and next week. We have churches. We're having to respond, trying to defend pastors. Honestly, I mean, I never thought I would say this. We are fighting to keep pastors out of jail here in California. So pray for us to have the energy. Pray for us to have the finances and the right attorneys to step in and help us. And there's one last case that we didn't even talk about, and that is the case that we have there in the Second Circuit in New York. And that, that has to do completely with whether or not internet companies have the ability to discriminate against individuals based upon their faith. And that is a huge case that oral arguments will be coming up probably in later September or October. And that's going to be that's going to be a blockbuster of a case, because it'll be the first one outside of the Ninth Circuit. And it's exactly what Trump is after, trying to prevent that sort of discrimination. And we happen to be the ones with the case. So please pray for us as we are going to be getting ready for that too.
We shall do that. And folks, I encourage you to pray for them as well. Pray for those to that end. Thanks again, Bob. Folks, keep the faith. God is in control. We will be off next week because next Monday is Labor Day. And we'll be on the following week with comedian Ron Pearson. So we'll keep you posted. And if you like us on Facebook, you'll get notified. Bob, thank you very much. And we'll be talking to you soon.
Okay, thank you.
Take care. Folks, thanks much. See you next.